Welcome Internet! Today we'll be making an Android app that uses PHP and MySQL to log in a user into an app. This is just going to be a demonstration of how it works. It can be implemented in basically any app that you currently have. I will try to make it as secure as possible, and it still needs work. Let's be honest, an app is never secure enough, so what I'm going to show you is just the basics, keeping it secure, keeping it basic. You can improve on it, you can add more things to it, but that's the gist of it. I will demonstrate how the app works in the first place. As we can see here, I can type in some random username and password, hit login, nothing's gonna happen. Here it's just gonna say failed to log in the console, but other than that nothing happens. But we can go ahead and create a user right here. Let's call it admin and give it a password of hello world. When I click register, that's going to create that user for us, and we can try to log in with them credentials. Admin and hello world. So when I hit login, the login is successful at this point. So that's basically what we are going to be making. In this case, this could be your actual application or your store or who knows what, but basically that's basically what you have to decide what's after the actual login form. Anyway, let's get into it. And we are back. Alright, so to start things off, we need to create some sort of a database. In this case, I'll be using Laragon. It's just a web server that has the MySQL database as well. You can use whatever you want. Here we have PHP MyAdmin, so we're gonna go ahead and create a new database. We'll call it app database. Just keep it simple. And click create. I don't know what that is. Get off. I don't know what that is. Anyway, once we have our database created, it's gonna ask us to create a table. So let's just create a table called users, and let's give it 3 fields. I guess it doesn't really matter as long as there is enough for a primary key, auto increment, a username to hold the actual username with this length of maybe 20. 20 should be all right. I mean, how many people use long usernames? Unless it's an email address, then that's a totally different thing. And the password is going to be hashed, so we're going to create a varchar of 64 characters in length. Alright, so once we have that, we can click on save. That's going to give us our user's table. It's currently empty, there's nothing inside it. Awesome. So now that we have that, let's switch to our IDE. In this case, I'm just using a Sublime text editor. It doesn't really matter what you use, but hey, whatever floats your boat, I guess. Anyway, let's go create a new file and let's just create index.php. Okay, in index.php, I guess we'll just have them login fields and all of that stuff. Yeah, might as well. Let's start. So, doc type HTML. This is the boring stuff. HTML. Close that. Head. Close that. And body. Not biddy, body. Buddy. Alright, so we have our basic HTML structure. We'll give it a title and call it my login page or something. Doesn't matter. Or even index. My index page. Alright, so in the body, let's just have some container, div class of container. Awesome, div class of container. This is going to contain all of our HTML, so we'll just style that in a bit. Let's go ahead and create the field set. Now, this is not required at all. This is just so that we can create a new user and see if the actual login works. Anyway, let's give it a little legend there. It says login, and then form. Okay, this is our form with the action of login user.php, and method is gonna be post. All right, so with that set, we can go ahead and create some input fields. Input type is gonna be text for the username. We'll give it a name of username as well. Username, and we are gonna give it some placeholder. Says username. It's just gonna tell the user what to type in this field. Alright, so we're not gonna bother with the styling of any of this, so we'll just leave it as plain as possible. So as long as we specify that it's a text field so that we can see what we're writing inside it. This is the important one, name. This is what's gonna be passed into the backend PHP script, so we are gonna need a name for every of the input fields. We're also gonna create an input field of type password, and give it a name of password as well. And let's place a placeholder here that says password also. Maybe capitalize the P just to show the user it's what they need to type in there, you know, just type in a password. And the last thing that we need is some sort of a button that basically submits the form. So the type of this input field is gonna be submit. Submit. Oh wow, I can't type today. And the name is gonna be login. Alright, so that's our login field. We can just take this basically and duplicate it down and change this to register and change this to register. Register.php, same thing. Leave everything the same and change the name of the submit to register. There we go. One more thing we can do here is add a value of login to each of these, and this one is going to be register. Okay, so that takes care of that. Basically, what the thing is going to look like is this. So we can just, I like to kind of center it in the middle, so style, it doesn't matter, and just say container is gonna be width of about 35% of the screen, and margin left is gonna be auto, and margin right is gonna be auto as well. Market, what the hell is this typing? Okay, so with that, our form should look like this. So we can try and log in and all of that stuff, but currently we don't have any users, so none of this is gonna work. We don't even have the login form, nor the register one. So let's go ahead and create the should we create the register first or the login first? Well, I guess we need the register. Without the actual registration form, we can't do anything. So let's go and create some sort of register form. So create file register. Oh wow, sorry guys, I can't type today at all. Register.php. All right, so with that, we can go ahead and start making this this file. So basically, we are gonna have three things passed in. One is gonna be the submit button's name. The other thing is gonna be the username, and the last thing is gonna be a password. So we need to catch all of them and check what kind of data we are dealing with. That's where the submit's name comes in. I mean, we're only going to handle one sort of action in this file, but if you're handling multiple things in a single file, then you'd be going off some sort of a input field, or the name of the input field. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead. So we are gonna say if is set this is just going to check if a variable is set. And what variable are we going to look for? Well, it's in the post array. Post is basically just an inbuilt function or an array that contains things passed in through the form. So once we click submit here, the post is going to contain the username, the password, and a register. So we can say if register is set, all lowercase. So now if this is set, we can go ahead and do other things. For example, we can catch the username and say it's stored in post and its name is username. Why is it capital? Oh, yeah. And we can also catch the password is equal to post password. Okay, so just to be clear, these come from these here. Anyway, now that we have that, we need to access the database somehow. So let's go ahead and create some sort of a class to handle the database connectivity. So new file, let's call it database.php. All right, so here we have a class that's just gonna be called database. The class is gonna have a magic constructor, which is it's a magic function basically. It's just a constructor. It's weird in PHP, but basically it's just written as this construct. Okay, so mostly if you're dealing with Java and whatnot, the constructor is the same name as the class, but in PHP the constructor is underscore construct. So there's two underscores here and then the word construct. Right, with that set in, we can go ahead and define a couple of variables that are gonna basically make our life easier. Once we actually go to production, we'll need to change a couple of things here and there. So these variables are gonna make it easy on us to modify our code. So let's start with private host name. So the host is gonna be where our server or our SQL server is located. My one is located on localhost. And the port of my server is 3307. You can find that in places such as this here. It says SQL server 3307. If you're using WAMP or MAMP or XAMPP or XAMPP, is that the same thing, XAMPP or XAMPP? Anyway, it doesn't matter. You will be able to find it in these logs here somewhere, probably my.ini, but yeah, you'll be able to find it somewhere around there. Anyway, once you have that, we need to specify a few more things. So private, let's go table. The table is gonna define what the name of our table is. So the name of our table is app database. Okay, so it's app underscore database. Okay, and the last few things that we need is the username to log in into the SQL database. These depend on what kind of installation you have, but for me it's root and the password is blank. There we go. And the last thing that we need to define is our database instance. So we'll just call it DB and initialize it to null. So what our constructor is gonna do is it's gonna create a new instance of the PDO object and it's gonna store it in this. So that whenever we have to deal with a database, we'll just basically create a new instance of the database, which is gonna create a new PDO object. All right, so let's go ahead. We'll wrap this in the try catch statement because that's what PDO does, you know. It needs some way to catch an exception called a PDO exception. Anyway, enough about that. So let's go ahead and set the this dot or this db is equal to the new PDO. PDO is a really nice way to deal with databases. It's nice and it's secure, unlike PHP, MySQL, or MySQLi. Anyway, so what kind of a driver do we want to use? We want to use the MySQL driver, and we want to set the host to be equal to our host. So this host. Okay, and we need a database name. So db name, there is no spaces there. db name is equal to this table. I probably picked a wrong name for this. This here was probably supposed to be called db name or database name, but it doesn't matter. Let's just leave it as db name or db table or just table. Anyway, the other two parameters that we have to pass in is the username, so user, and password. I said that weird, password. Okay, anyway, now that we have that, we need to catch an exception. In this case, it's a PDO exception, and we'll just call it T, it doesn't matter. And we'll just kill the page if something goes wrong, say failed to connect. Okay, so that's all that's gonna do. The constructor is just gonna create a new instance of the PDO object. It's gonna store it in the private variable here called db, and now we need some sort of a public function to access that db variable. So we can call it just getDB here, and don't forget the function here. So public function getDB, and its only job is to return this .db. All right, so that's basically it for this class. I don't see any errors there, so that's good. Okay, so before we use it, we need to import it. We need to require it in one time before we can use it. So the keyword for that is require once, and we give it the location of the file, which is just database.php. It's in the same directory, so we can just say the name of the file. It's on the same directory level. Okay, now that we have that, we can say db is equal to new database. Great. Now that we have that, well, we could even just say get database like that. So now this is gonna contain the PDO object where we can use that to request or do queries and all of that stuff. So now we are gonna go ahead here and just refresh the page. Let's go to register.php. All right, so we have an error on line 9 that says it's on register.php line 9. Let's have a look. Oh, really? Don't like that? Okay, so we'll just have to delete that and work around it. All right, so that worked. We connected to the database, all is good. All right, so let's go and insert our first element in the database. So one thing that we need to do before we actually do that is we need to secure our password. This needs to be secure. So the good function to use for securing your password is password functions in PHP. They're easy to use. They don't require much, but we can just say password is equal to password hash and say we want the password to be hashed. And what kind of algorithm do we want to use? We want to use the password default. So that's going to create a hash for us to use as our password. So just don't use MD5s or any SHA-1s or anything like that. They can be easily cracked, while this is by a bit I mean a lot more secure than any of the standard hashing algorithms. All right, so once we have that, we are ready to kind of create our first entry in our database. All right, so to create query, we just say db getDB, and we want to prepare. So, and we'll store this in a query variable so that we can do things with it. So here we want to insert into our table called users, and the values we want to insert are I forgot let me see the structure here, ID, username, and password, while ID is auto increment. So we can just basically pass in null for the ID. The username will just create a placeholder called username and another placeholder for a password. Okay, so I'm not checking if the username already exists in the database, so that's another thing that you might add to your code if you want to check if the username already exists, but I'll leave that out for now. Alright, so let's see, query, we can execute this right now. Execute. And we need to pass in the placeholders. So the first one is the username, and that's gonna be equal to username, the variable username, and the other placeholder is, I forgot the colon there, password, all capital letters, and that's gonna contain the password variable that's up there. So these two, or more like these two. Anyway, now that we have that, we're ready to execute. So sorry, we already executed. We already did that right here, so that's fine. We don't have to do anything else. At this rate, we are basically done. That's our registration completed. So let's go ahead and try to create a user. So the user, let's call it user1, and the password is going to be password. I just double type that, password. When I click register, oh shit, I have call to undefined execute, PDO statement execute. How is that undefined? Query, oh yeah, spelling, bad. Execute, there we go. So if I refresh this, it's not gonna show anything here, but if I go to the users here, it's gonna say user1 and the long password is right there. So that's that part completed.